first from a mob that stormed the U.S. Capitol today. Now lawmakers are calling for the president to be removed from the Oval Office.
And a string of burglaries reported in the Gonzaga area during winter break. Now police are tracking down the stolen items and the suspects responsible.
A dry day today, but I'm tracking some wet weather for your Friday. That and your weekend forecast coming up.
Good evening and thank you for joining us for KREM 2 News at 5. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
Welcome, I'm Whitney Ward. Just one day after domestic terrorists stormed the U.S. Capitol, there are resignations, calls for impeachment, and questions about security.
But first, within the last hour, President Donald Trump released a video on Twitter. In it, he called the attack on the Capitol heinous and said that he was outraged by the violence and destruction. He also said the rioters, quote, do not represent us.
The president also addressed the election, and he stopped just short of conceding, but for the first time did acknowledge that he is leaving office. Take a listen.
Now Congress has certified the results. A new administration will be inaugurated on January 20th. My focus now turns to ensuring a smooth, orderly, and seamless transition of power. This moment calls for healing and reconciliation.
The president ends the video by telling his supporters he knows they're disappointed, but that their journey is, quote, only just beginning.
Now to the latest on yesterday's attack on the Capitol. 4 people died in the riots, one of them shot by U.S. Capitol Police. The 3 others died after suffering medical emergencies. At least 83 people have been arrested so far. A big portion of those arrests, though, were for violating that 6 p.m. curfew. Those arrested did make their first court appearances today. Officials say at least 50 officers were hurt yesterday. And as far as the rioters who forced their way inside the Capitol, the FBI says it is working to identify them, and they are asking for the public's help in doing so.
Today, we also know at least one of the Trump supporters who did storm the Capitol is from here in the Northwest. In a video posted to social media, this man from Boise, Josiah Colt, is seen outside of the Capitol complex, and he admitted to being among those who first breached the Capitol. Reporters captured photos that appear to show him inside. In a video, he admits to hopping down into the chamber and sitting in Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi's chair. He was not among those arrested at the scene. As of tonight, it remains unclear if he will face any criminal charges.
Breaking news tonight, the U.S. Capitol Police Chief is resigning after the mob forced their way into the Capitol yesterday. At least 8 Trump administration officials have also resigned in the wake of what happened in D.C. yesterday, including Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao. Her resignation takes effect Monday. She is the first cabinet member to announce that she's stepping down. Several other White House officials have also announced their resignations as well. That includes former White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney. He was currently serving as special envoy to Northern Ireland.
And several Washington state lawmakers as well as congressional leaders are calling for President Trump's removal from office.
Now House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is pushing for cabinet officials to act quickly to invoke the 25th Amendment.
Remove this president by immediately invoking the 25th Amendment. If the Vice President and the Cabinet do not act, the Congress may be prepared to move forward with impeachment.
More than 100 lawmakers have called for the president's removal now. The first Republican to call for the 25th Amendment was a congressman from Illinois. 9 Democratic lawmakers from Washington have all released statements for President Trump's removal. And today, President-elect Joe Biden addressed the treatment that rioters received when they overtook the U.S. Capitol.
The president-elect says he believes if it were Black Lives Matter protesters, they would have been met with a much harsher police response.
No one can tell me that if had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesting yesterday, they wouldn't have been treated very, very differently than the mob of thugs that stormed the Capitol. We all know that's true. And it is unacceptable, totally unacceptable.
Now, after the breach, 1,100 D.C. National Guard troops were deployed and hundreds of federal law enforcement officers were also sent in to assist. You compare that to June, when about 5,000 guardsmen and 1,600 active duty troops were brought into the D.C. area in advance of protests following the death of George Floyd. In the past, President Trump's tweets characterized Black Lives Matter protesters as thugs. Wednesday, he called the mobs who breached the Capitol great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long.
All right, turning to weather now. A quiet Thursday could lead to some rain, possibly even snow tomorrow.
Meteorologist Tom Sherry is in now to tell us more about what we can expect. Tom?
Well, cloudy skies right now. We're at 37 degrees. The current temperature, the average high for this time of year is 33. You can see not much in the wind department, so that's good news. Winds out of the north-northeast at 5 miles an hour. Here's a look at your forecast, calling for some areas of fog setting up late tonight and overnight with a low of about 30 degrees. Could see some rain and snow showers tomorrow, and then we'll look for snow in the mountains as we look for a daytime high of 38 degrees. Right now, the weekend is looking mostly cloudy and mostly dry. Slight chance of a little shower activity Sunday morning, but I don't think much. 37 the high on Saturday, 38 expected on Sunday. I'll check the rest of your forecast coming up in a few minutes.
Sounds good, Tom. Thank you very much. The Washington Interstate Activities Association, the governing body for high school sports in Washington, announced last night that they are switching up which high school sports will be played in their proposed season 1. That begins on February 1st. Fall sports will now begin instead of winter sports. Sports Director Brenna Green spoke with GSL and MCC Director Herb Rockford today about the latest news. It seems unlikely the GSL will start up practice on February 1st, at the very least for outdoor sports due to our region's weather. But there is another hurdle that he says needs to be passed before we see high school sports in our region.
The superintendents of all of the 14 or the 9 school districts that make up the GSL and the 4 districts that make up the MCC are really unanimous in saying we need, first of all, to get back to in-person learning of some kind, whether it's hybrid model or whatever, before we are ready to implement any sports.
Now, obviously, the majority of high school students in our area are still fully online. The GSL athletic directors do have a meeting planned for tomorrow to more formally discuss a high school sports start date.
Top-ranked Gonzaga men's basketball faces a tough conference opponent tonight. BYU visits the McCarthy Athletic Center. However, this was not the game that was originally supposed to be played today for either team.
No, Karthik Venkatraman is joining us now from the kennel with more on today's big matchup. Karthik?
It'll be an interesting matchup for sure between Gonzaga and BYU. As you mentioned, this game was not supposed to be played today. Originally, Gonzaga was supposed to be playing Santa Clara, but the Broncos had coronavirus cases on their team. For BYU, well, it was the same case. They were supposed to play Pacific today, but the Tigers had coronavirus cases on their team. So that's how this matchup between GU and BYU was born. The announcement that came out for this matchup to be played this past Tuesday. So that's just how it all turned around in this quick motion that Gonzaga went from playing a mid-tier player in the conference to playing the second best team in the conference once again. Head coach Mark Few talked about the fluidity of the season this past Saturday after the game against San Francisco, not knowing what was to come a couple days later.
We talked about it all the way back in September and October. This was going to be a different year. It was going to be disjointed. It was going to be different. It was going to be hard. We all need to stay flexible, and we all need to stay nimble. How would I describe it? Almost looseness to it this year, that you just need to kind of roll with it.
The last time these two teams played, last season in Provo, Utah, BYU beat Gonzaga. GU was the number 2 team at the time. I'm sure the Zags will have revenge on their mind against the Cougars today. Tip-off is that 5:30 game is on ESPN. Reporting at the McCarthy Athletic Center, I'm Karthik Venkatraman, Prem 2 Sports.